We're now on Kuf Yud Zayin with Beis v'chovos shekavu lehem zman. Now, the Brisa, in the context of the Shitas Chachamim, subcategorizes Korbanos Chova. There are two categories of Korbanos Chova. There are those that are time-bound, and that means that those Korbanos have a Kvius Zman, right? And you can only bring them at a certain time. For example, a korban tamid has to be brought morning and evening, as opposed to other korbanos, which are korbanos chova, but they're not kavulem zman. Like, for example, a par helim davashel tzibur, or the shnei seirim of Yom Kippur, or the soyer of a kohen mashuach. In certain certain korbanos have to be brought depending upon an incident that happened to take place. And the difference is that with regard to a korban that is kavul zman, a korban chova, that has a special status, and that's going to be Reb Shimon. So let's go back a little bit to Kuf Yud Zayin and Aleph for a second to fill it in. Reb Shimon Omer Af tzibur lo akrivu el psachim. So we're going back to a Bamas Tzibur, and Rabbi Shimon says that they only use the korban tzibur, the Bamas Tzibur for one of two things. Either for the korban Pesach, or alternatively, for a korban chova shekavul zman, like the korban tamid, or, for example, a musaf of Shabbos and Moed. However, if there was a korban chova that doesn't have kavul zman, that was not brought, certainly not on a private boma, but not even on the Bamas Tzibur. My time with Rabbi Meir. So after having presented all these shitas, Rabbi Meir, Chachamim, Rabbi Yehuda, another shita the Chachamim, and finally Rabbi Shimon, 5 shitas. Now the Gemara goes back to Rabbi Meir. My time with Rabbi Meir. Why does Rabbi Meir say that you cannot bring a korban chova on a private bama? The Amar Krai derives from Apostle Tasun Kirchol Asher Anachnu Osim Po Hayom. Okay, now this is the 14 years of Kibush V'Chiluk after Yahushua crosses the Jordan into Eretz Yisrael, and the Torah is saying Lo Tasun, like Moshe Rabbeinu is already warning them about what they're not allowed to do during those 14-year periods, even though we do it today, meaning even though in the Midbar we do it. Amalei Moshe Yisrael, Ki Ailisu La'aretz, when you enter into the land and you're busy conquering the land and divvying it up, then Yisharos, the word Yisharos is referring to a korban nidava, takrivu. You're allowed to bring a korban nidava during those 14 years. And the premise here is you could bring a korban nidava, which would be either an olah or a shlomim, during anywhere, whether it's on the Bamas Tzibur or even on your Bamas Yachid. But chovas lo takrivu. But you cannot bring a korban chova. Okay, now we have to ask the question, what's the status of the Nazir? Rabbi Meir holds that since you accepted upon the Naziris voluntarily, the korbanos that are brought by the Nazir at the termination of the Naziris are considered as voluntary korbanos. Rabbana, no, ein mincha b'bama Naziris chovas ninu. Okay, so we didn't really get into this whole discussion about mincha. Apparently, you have to know more about nidava of a mincha, but apparently, with regard to a mincha, there's a machlokas here between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim as to whether or not a mincha could be brought on a Bamas Yachid during the time of Heter Bamos. And ostensibly, we understand the sheet of Rabbi Meir because there's a minchas nidava. Why do the Chacham say ein mincha bibama? I don't know. He says here in the footnote, we'll only know that down on Kuf Yud Tes. So we're gonna have to wait till Kuf Yud Tes when we'll be in Haifa, when we finish the Masechta. Okay. So now we have Machlokas Nazirus. This we can understand. The Chachamim hold that a carbon of a Nazir is a carbon chova. All that he accepted voluntarily was Nazirus, meaning all the Isurim of a Nazir, Tiglachas and Tuma and Shtiyas Yain. But he didn't accept upon himself to bring a carbon. That wasn't part of his Kabbalah. But the Torah says that you're a Nazir, you're finishing Nazirus, you have to bring a carbon. So that's carbon chova. And the Chacham agreed to Rabbi Meir that a carbon chova can't be brought during the time of Heter Bamos. Omar Shmuel. Okay, now Shmuel is going to explain what we set out, outside. Machlokes bechatos v'osham al bi'olos u'shlamim divrei kol yisharos ninu v'kreve. Now let's just think. Why does Shmuel think that Rabbi Meir would hold that a chatos and an asham are karbonos nedava? Where's the nedava in a chatos and an asham? Just 1 second. Did I miss a point here? What's up? I don't get it. Okay, so that we'll have to leave that as an outstanding question for now. Why chatas v'yosham, according to Rabbi Meir in Shmuel's favorite reference, are classified as a carbon nedava? Certainly the Chacham are right, it's a carbon chova. Ah, now I understand. I'm sorry, I made a boo-boo. The chatas v'yosham that Shmuel's talking about are the karbonos that the Nazir brings at the end of his Nazirus. And since, according to the logic of Reb Meir, he accepted upon himself the Nazirus voluntarily, that means he accepted upon himself to bring the Chatos Nazir and the Olas Nazir as a voluntary carbon. Therefore, it was brought on a Bamas Yachid during the time of Heter Bamos, because it's a carbon Nedava. So the Nazirus that he accepted upon himself includes also the Chatos and the Osham that the Nazir brings. The Chacham say no, this is imposed upon him by the Torah. Avol be Olos Ushlamim. Now the Nazir brings, in addition to the Chatos and the Osham, he brings a carbon Ol and a carbon Shlamim. Tivrei Akol Yisharis Ninu V'Kreve. Even the Rabbanan agree that these are voluntary korbanos. Why are they voluntary korbanos? The Torah imposed it on me. The answer is that the category is a category of a carbon nedava. Even though the Ola and the Shlomim of the Nazir are certainly korbanos chova that the Torah imposed upon him according to the Rabbanan, but nevertheless, when we look at the category, the classification of these karbanos, which is Ola and Shlomim, then those are categories of karbanos nedava. Mosiv Rabba challenges Shmuel from a brayso. Chazav v'shok, right? These are the parts of the carbon shlomim that are given, or even a carbon toda, are given as a gift to the kohen. It's called chazav v'shok. And Trumas Lachmei Toda, which again, if you bring a carbon toda, you bring lechamim, and some of those lechamim will be taken by the kohanim. Is noagim b'bama gdola ve'noagim b'bama ketana. Okay. In other words, with regard to these karbanos, the Torah says lifnei Hashem. in a pasuk in Vayikra Perek Zion. And therefore, you need some sort of a very, very significant mizbeach. And the mizbeach of a Bama Gedola in Gilgal, for example, is considered a Lifnei Hashem. You know, it has that a very upgraded status. Okay? But your own private Bama, no. So Rabbah says the following. Now, with regard to a Nazir brings a Shlomim, and the Torah says, bring it Lifnei Hashem, yet the Brisa mentions only Chaz v'Shok. Or in the case of Toda, it mentions the Lachamim of a Toda. But implies, therefore, that Ilu Hazroa B'Shela, which is the carbon of a Shlomim of a Nazir, shall be Nazir. And there, the Zroa B'Shela, right? They took the Zroa and they had to cook it. Then we're going to say that we're not going to apply this principle. So, if we're going to say that Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim have a machlokas about the Ola and the Shlomim, you know, whether they could be brought on a private boma, Sahamani Rabbanani. So we could say that this brisa reflects the shita of the Rabbanon, and therefore Shlomim and Nazir cannot be brought on a Bomas Yachid. But Amrit, right, because the brisa only allows, in a Bama Gdol, it allows these cases of Chaz v'Shok. It doesn't allow the Zroa B'Shela of a Nazir, and that's the Rabbanan who say that the Karbanos of a Nazir are considered a Karbanos Chova, and they cannot be offered on a Bama Ketana. But according to Yushmuel, that the machlokas between the Chachamim and Rabbi Meir is only with regard to Chatos v'Osham, and even the Chachamim agree that as far as the Ola and Shlomim are concerned, since again, as we said before, conceptually they are categories of a Karban Nidava, therefore the Rabbanan would agree that you could bring, that the Nazir will bring his Ola and Shlomim on a Bamas Yachid during the period of Heter Bamos. Is Halmani, then the Brisa doesn't fit in with anybody. Because even the Rabbanan agree that the Nazir Shlomim are brought on a Bama Ketana. Right? And now the Brisa is saying that no, you know, the Zroa B'Shela of the Shlomim of a Nazir cannot be brought on a Bama Ketana. So therefore, Yitmar, we're going to have to rewrite the text of Shmuel. Hachi Yitmar Amar Shmuel Machlokes Bi Ola Ushlamim. Right, the Machlokes about a Bamas Yachid between Chachamim and Reb Meir only applies to the Ola and the Shlamim. Right, because again, according to Reb Meir, he accepted upon himself the Zirus voluntarily, and therefore these Karbanos, including all the Karbanos that a Nazir brings, Ola and Shlamim for sure, are considered as Karbanos Nedava. Whereas the Rabbanan say, no, the Torah imposed upon him. Aval Chatos v'Osham. But the Nazir also has to bring a Chatos v'Osham, which categorically are Karbanos that are only brought L'Shem Chova, Divrei Kol Chovas Ninhu. Even Rabbi Meir would agree that it's got the status of a Karban Chova, below Krevi, can't be brought on a Bama Ktana. We'll just quickly read a little bit to say that we finished the daf. Omar Mar, Chachamim Omrim Kol Shat Tzivu Makrivim Bi Ohel. According to another quote of the Chachamim, which again we don't know exactly how it's different than the first quote of the Chachamim, but anything that was brought in the Mishkan, in the Midbar, could be brought in the Mishkan at Gilgal. My Taimayu Rabbanon. In other words, why are you saying the following? That a Yachid can't bring a carbon chova, like a Chatas v'Yosham, even on a Bama Gedola, Bama Tzibur, Amakra ish hayosher ben of yasa ish yashrus hu delikrav. Yashrus means a nidava, right? But chovos likravu. But as far as the tzibur is concerned, afilu chovos likravu. Okay, then this is where we'll stop, and that's the shita of the Chacham. Rabbi Yehuda has a different shita, and then we finally get to Rabbi Shimon. Okay, then. So let me take this opportunity to wish you a great Shabbos, and thank you very much. And a safe trip to Haifa.